We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the law, we enforce it. But at the end of the day, each and every member should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is Tuesday, May 12th, 2015, and I'm coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. We've actually been gone the past week. I had to be out of town. I'm how to explain it. I was out of town last week for my paying job, and even the week before that, I believe we had to cancel last Thursday. So it's been about a week and a half, I believe, almost, since our last live show. So I apologize for that. Hopefully everybody out there, missed us, but not really counting on that. But it'd be nice if some of you did. So thank you for tuning in to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknight, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. You can listen on Spreaker and nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. We promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do what you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom, as well as exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force, as all governments are based on power, control, and ruling over others, and achieve this through violence and force. I feel like I've been gone forever, man, especially last week. I had I don't know if I want to call this the fortunate opportunity or the unfortunate opportunity. It depends on how you want to look at it. I look at it as a fortunate opportunity because I was able to watch a lot of government media and really see their bullshit and just how blatant it is. And, I know that it is, but I don't really watch it much anymore unless I am trying to see the bullshit that they're putting out there. But I haven't kind of stopped that to an extent. I was doing it a lot for a while with listening to like Sirius Radio, the conservative stations, and then the liberal stations, and just seeing what they were putting out there and the bullshit. But I even got away from doing that, where what I listen to a lot, while I'm working, as I've talked about before, I work in the office a lot of time. I'm working independently, so I'll listen to various liberty-oriented podcasts and kind of check them out and see what's going on with them and any ideas or things that I can see that or to assist me in my own analysis of myself and looking at things that they're doing that I can maybe help incorporate into my own show. Honestly, I haven't found a lot, but no, there are a lot of good, shows out there and that are improving and getting better. And I've talked about before that I still think that as a whole, you have these exceptions like Free Talk Live and some of these other shows that are at that top level. But when you're doing a show and you're not able to do it full time and doing all these other things and still trying to, things, whether it be a job plus activism and then trying to do a show as well, which I do consider a form of activism, but it makes it a lot harder to give the same, high quality show and to be able to put all that time and research into preparing for it and just improving and getting better. So, and I didn't mean to get off on a whole thing there, But that being said, it is great to be back. And I was sitting there, so back to, what I was saying last week. I was in Florida, and not a lot of options regarding TV, or I guess I could have listened to some alternative media, but it was just like after working and then just going back to the hotel. And they have a limited number of channels. And there were some things going on that I really did want to see what kind of ridiculous bullshit coverage that they were putting out there. And throughout the week, all the things that I saw, it seemed like to me, and again, I don't really watch any of this shit anymore, so it's hard to say. But even in the past, when I used to watch it, and it still frustrated me, I felt like this is one of the worst weeks of bullshit. I mean, the Boston bombing, I think, was a similar thing, but was also a similar thing for me where I was in Orlando as well. And, pretty much just watching all those channels, observing what bullshit they're putting out there. So there's a few different stories that I want to talk about that I think really speak to that and speaks to this total exploitation and agenda of government media and how they're trying to portray things that really, to me, doesn't even seem like the reality from any circumstance. And the small aspect of truth, the tiny part of truth there is definitely not representative of the majority of any of the things that are going on. So some of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is definitely what's been going on in Baltimore, but how that has been exploited. And I really haven't, to be honest, looked at a lot in the past couple of days. I think the last report I really looked at, as I didn't feel well after I got back, from my trip. So I kind of laid low the past 3-4 days and even worked from home yesterday from work just because of not really feeling that well. But I did see a lot of stuff the week before that I wanted to talk about, and that would still, of course, apply, and I have plenty to say on that. So we'll talk about those stories as well as others. As always, our Tuesday co-host live from Orlando, Pete Murtha, is joining us as always. And before I bring Pete on, and I actually did this, I did do this time. So the one time I bring it up, I didn't even have to, where the music is off, so it's not going to fuck with Pete's mic when I bring him up. So thanks, Pete, as always, for joining us.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be back again. And I hope you got some rest this weekend after your trip. And we're ready. I'm ready to do the show again, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, so you had hopefully a nice week off, or day off, whatever you want to call it, from your one Tuesday, and
seems like a week.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it honestly, when I don't do the show, even for like a couple of days, and I had mentioned the Thursday before I left, so I had flew out late Saturday night. That Thursday, I didn't end up doing a show, and I do at least 3 live shows a week. I know we say that the show is on weeknights because I was doing replays the other nights, and I haven't been since I got off of Blog Talk Radio, because you can actually just go to Spreaker and listen to it that way, as opposed to there's no listen line being there, and that was the main thing. So people that wanted to listen on the listen line, that we had something playing all the time, and I want to get back to that and look at alternatives for listen lines. There's so much, especially I think being a perfectionist when it comes to this, where I want to give the best show possible. I don't really care. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to get paid for it, but I mean, that's not my motivation. So regardless, I want to give people the best show possible, and not only from a informational standpoint and to put those ideas out there. But at the same time, you need to entertain people to a certain extent, not to the point that you're compromising, your ideas and not getting them out there. But that's going to make the difference. I mean, anybody can sit there, and I've talked about this before. You watch a documentary of somebody just, sitting there like, Bueller. Today, we're talking about the media. And the media today exploits lots of things. Maybe if you're trying to go to sleep, I guess that might be pretty helpful. But assuming that that's not your goal and you want to get some information and not just from, again, I mean, I don't know what I call the show a news-oriented show. I mean, we'll talk about some news and some things that are going on, but we'll also talk about philosophically different things and ideas regarding government and the truth about government and stuff like that as well. So I think we cover a lot of different things, and I want to be able to deliver those ideas in a way that you're able to keep focus and pay attention and want to listen and not just be like, well, it's just fucking boring, I'm going to turn it off now. And so hopefully, we're continuing. Another thing that we're continuing to work on, and you're welcome to give any feedback or any suggestions. Just go to our website, Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and there's one of those boxes somewhere. you can click on the contact us. It's easy to find, and then just put the information in there. And I don't think I've really gotten any, but any that I do get, again, assuming, as I said before, if it's like fuck you, you suck or something, that's not really gonna help. But anything that is a legitimate criticism, and if you think, well, maybe you should do this, or maybe you repeat this, whatever, I'd be happy to hear that, because really I do want to give people the best show possible. Just the one thing that I think, no matter what happens, I'm not going to compromise on the ideas and getting those ideas out there. But how we do that, there's different things that we can mess around with, and different segments, and how we present it, and the best way to really communicate that to people. I don't think that's not compromising your ideas. It's just looking at, different ways to communicate the same thing. But the constant is always that those ideas that we're trying to get out there, and that trying to make sure that it gets out there to the people, and that hopefully, I know it's not going to be everybody, but hopefully there's a certain amount of people that listen, and it really makes a difference. So tonight we're going to talk all about more media exploitation. We've talked somewhat about it in the past. I call it all government media. I know there's mainstream media. That's not really a word I think in my vocabulary anymore, because mainstream media is government media, because that's really what it is, and it's controlled by a government at a certain level. Now, I'm not saying like there is, and who knows, it actually might be possible, but that there's a department that, well, there kind of is, I guess. You get the FCC, but like a secret department that actually makes sure that the things that are presented when it comes to news programs, that they review them or something like that. I'm not saying, that type of thing, but I would, if I had to bet, I would say that it was, or it is, the kind of structure where people just know there's certain lines you don't cross. And I'm sure there's been examples made of people that have crossed those lines at times. And whether it's something, semi-extreme, like just getting fired or blacklisted, or something very extreme and insane where people end up dead. And we've seen people end up dead actually recently, reporters, and reporters have been gone after under the Obama administration, I guess more than any other, not to single out and say, well, he's terrible, these other people are good. But no, I don't think it would matter who's in there now. I think it's just, again, a progressive system where the next person just keeps forwarding that agenda. So, but again, we will be talking about some of these things and really getting into a lot of specifics as well, because looking at some of the stuff last week, really, and it's always, I've talked about this before, like, it's always like, okay, well, nothing can really surprise me. It's, whatever, because things are so bad. It's like you think that no matter what it is, this ain't gonna surprise me. This is how fucked up they are, and that's what happens, and whatever. But and I don't know that it's surprising in the sense that it's something that extreme. It's just like they have the balls to just do this, and really with total disregard for the people that they're saying that we think you're this fucking stupid, that this is how we're going to present something, and we're confident that enough for you is so fucking stupid that you're not even going to know. So I kind of wanted to start with this whole thing in Baltimore, and we've talked about it because it has been going on for a couple of weeks now, and really I've talked about it from what happened and the standpoint of protesting and things like that. But really, I kind of wanted to look at it more from the way I saw government media really present and exploit this, and really how fucked up I think it is. And I just, I'm just watching this shit, and it's just like, on some level it's frustrating, but I guess you get to a point where you get used to it. I don't know. I don't think, at least for me, you ever get used to it where, like, it doesn't bother you. I guess it just doesn't shock you. But again, as I said, you always have stuff that comes up that you're still kind of surprised there, that they have the fucking balls to say some of this shit, and they really believe that people are that stupid. I mean, P, in your opinion, when you look at, and maybe not specific to the stories that we're going to get into that have been going on in the past couple of weeks, but in general, I mean, do you look at it as, okay, well, government media knows that they're only really targeting a certain percentage that they know they can manipulate, and the rest of the people know it's bullshit? Or do they, think more highly of themselves? Or, I mean, what do you think their whole, their mind state or their thoughts are on what they're doing, really, and the whole, how people view them?
Well, it's not a one-size-fits-all question, right? I mean, just so we know where we're starting from. And if you take people who are interested in what's happening, right, you immediately go down to what, less than 50% of the population votes, right? So at least half the people that are in this country that could vote don't really believe that process means anything, right? And I would probably be pretty easily convinced that same disinterested population doesn't buy into the media and what they're doing, really care what they say, believe it, or take it, as something that has weight. So I think they'll watch it for conversational purposes, because, you meet a lot of people who just agree with things because they don't want to seem different or odd. They want to be accepted. And I find more and more people like that. But focusing on the 50%-ish of adults that care, you got the two sides, right? And the media has been honed to kind of create a bigger gap between the two sides. So my take on it is that half the people are really out of the game, and they don't pay attention to this, and they don't think or care to do anything about it. One of those two. And they're a little bit of a mixed bag in that respect. Then the people who say, they're concerned, that's another mixed bag, because you have people who are just, they're doing it to try to belong to something or have an opinion, and they don't really have an informed opinion. They have a brainwashed opinion, right? They watch the news, they pick the news they like, and they argue from that side. And I mean, I think I have a lot of I have a good perspective on it, because that's what happens, right? You get a news broadcast from two different sides, and although one side has more team players than the other, but it really doesn't matter. So these people get on their side and they ride it, and I was one of those people for a very long time. So what I did was I started wanting to know what was really true. And when you start to want to know what's really the truth, it changes how you look at things. And they don't want to change. They want to be right. I think there's a lot of arrogance baked into that. And I think that it's hard to break out of that, because so many people enjoy that aspect. You hear the word vitriolic all the time. I don't even know what it really means. They feed off of that, and it doesn't help anybody, right? It just pushes people away. They insult each other, or they ignore each other, or a selection of other alternatives that aren't anything that brings people together. And you know me, Dave. I'm all about having people love each other, and I think that's what's really important.
You're all about the Benjamins?
Why? Yeah. Oh, how'd that get in there?
Well, the song.
All about the Benjamins?
Yeah.
It sounds like a cool song.
It's just a song. But, well, the Benjamins, of course, they're referring to Ben Franklin.
Oh. Was he into loving everyone, or just had a lot of
Nah,
children?
he's just on the $100 bill.
Yeah.
So,
He sure is.
yeah.
That one I don't understand.
I thought they actually had $1,000 bills at some point.
They did, yeah.
Do they still make them? Because you're going to need those as inflation continues and the value of the dollar goes down. You're going to need a lot of thousands and shit.
That is so true. That is so true. I've actually seen $1,000 bills, and yeah, but they haven't printed them since 1932 or 34, something like that. I could Google it real quick, but they're not common. They're rare, and they're worth about $2,000 to collectors.
Well, that's kind of stupid, I guess. But hey, I'm going to pay for this worthless piece of paper. I'm going to pay an extra $1,000, another worthless piece of paper for this fucking thing.
I'm going to double down.
And not to get off topic, collector shit is just, it's very strange, because it's all about, it's kind of just what people are willing to pay for it, in a sense. I know they value it and stuff like that. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I collect, like, I have baseball cards and basketball cards, and I think I even have some football cards, but it was more the basketball and football, because I think it was right around when they had these basketball cards hoops, and they started becoming pretty popular. And I had Robinson's rookie, but I didn't have the hoops original rookie. I had the other one, and it wasn't worth as much money. Whatever. I still think I got them somewhere. It might even be at my mom's house or something. But yeah, I mean, this whole thing of what's the value of something. First of all, knowing that that's pretty much controlled. Like, if we look at gold and silver now, the real value is probably triple what they're saying it is, but that's based on some other things. But just in general, the value of something is really based upon what people are kind of willing to pay for it. But I think that's a whole nother discussion there. But yeah, so this whole thing is nothing new. I'm sure we talked about it maybe not as a, whole show topic, but we've talked a lot about media exploitation and a lot of that coming from the government, because really what it is, it's and this is a major theme throughout the show, is this exploitation of whatever happens. So you look at, of course, things that happen throughout the world or throughout the country, they're going to first be reported, the news media, and then what's going to happen is the politicians are going to do what they can to take advantage of that. And that's pretty much, what they do. And the government, in tandem with the media, is able to, shape public opinion and exploit things. And I happen to think, and I don't want to get into too much detail here, but I happen to think it is very calculated. So all of these things that go on, and if you look at, whatever it might be, whether it's certain media or television or movies or billboards or whatever you could possibly think of, that it's very calculated. Now, I know you have some people that would just, well, that's just coincidence. The majority of it is coincidence. Maybe some of it's calculated. And I guess it would be hard to have everything or approach everything from that mindset to, have like some mastermind that works for the government, the Ministry of Propaganda, which really they have that, but to have every little possible thing and control every little possible person. And that's why I think, the whole, the Illuminati, and it's this big thing, like everybody just goes along with it. And within it, you don't have people disagreeing and fighting with each other. And that, so it's kind of like, I remember going to film school, and you would, one of the classes was film theory and criticism, and I was reading more into the film, and they did this because of this, or this was placed here in the background because it was symbolic of, and all those things. And I'm sure some of it did hold true, and that was the reason behind it. But I'm also sure that some of it was just fucking coincidence. So I definitely do think that things are very controlled, and I think that there are a lot of things that are the way they are for a reason, but it's how far does that go? But government media, I don't think, is really one that's very debatable, in my opinion. I think that's just pretty obvious. That's one of the easiest things to use, and I think one of the most common things to use is maybe not even just, when I say government media, not just say newscasts or something, but if you think about this, how much do things like music and movies and pop culture shape all of these ideas? And think about even expectations of life. And I know we're getting a little off topic, but this kind of relates to what we're talking about, and we'll get back more into the specifics of some of the issues. But if you think about really all of these things, and this is maybe going pretty far out there, although I think it's very plausible that even things that you just may think are normal, or things that you want to do, or how much of that is really just programmed into you by society. And you can think of normal things like, marriage, or wanting to have kids, or just wanting to have this kind of life like you see on TV, where you want the house and the picket fence and being in a nice neighborhood, or whatever it might be. Or even if it's, a negative side where, your favorite TV, the TV that you're watching is more of a criminal lifestyle or something. But either way, saying that all of these things, I think, shape people's ideas more than they even realize.
Well, I mean, I agree with the music. I I agree that when elections come around, things are done. You can see a change in things. You can see a change in reporting. You can see a change in, like you said, music. I've started kind of not really an analysis, but I think I'm aware that there is a, a specific formula they use when they get certain candidates online, and I think it revolves around the use of like rock and versus like hippie music versus like rock music or old school music, and I can't prove it scientifically, but to me, I do see a change in that. And then with reporting, I think they start changing the way they report things. They're not as harsh on the people that seem to tend to win, and they give them more breaks because, especially in the primaries, you'll see them absolutely crush candidates, embarrass them, humiliate them for things that you could have drawn out on probably most of the candidates involved in the race. It's not fun to watch because you see people get all upset about it because they were hoping that their dark horse was going to come up and do something, and then he's pulverized with a story, and they won't get off of it, not any way, near, shape, or form, and then they give buys on reports, and I'll pick on Jeb Bush because he's talking about not being in the Iowa poll. I mean, how can you talk about avoiding Iowa when you're running for president? That's supposed to be the big kickoff, right? So we'll see how much press that gets, but it was mentioned today, and we'll just see if there's anything to it, or do they give him a buy on it and act like it's kind of start minimizing Iowa, because when they do campaigning, the press does nothing but rave about that, how important it is and what a landmark, it is, even though it's a small poll, but they still, put a lot of weight on it. Unless a candidate wins it, that's not, the one they want to. So we'll see what's happening with that one. But I think you can see a change in how things are presented depending on who's, going to win. And, I believe they're picked anyway. Or they definitely have a primary candidate. But, and culturally with music and things like that, I think there are shifts in it and changes. Everything's, they're promoting new alternative music now. Not hip hop, not things that come out of the black community. They're promoting, very, very bands. They're the big bands that are coming out, and so they're reducing the hip hop footprint. And hip hop's been around since the 80s. I mean, it's pretty much dominated music for the last 30 years, and now it seems like they're pulling back on it, and I don't know why, because it's an insanely popular thing. But I do know kids like the new music, and because it's new. And they're getting, if they're getting into their teens and college years, maybe they're drawn to it because it's different and new, and they've seen the old stuff since they were little kids. So, but there's an array of things that can be done to manipulate public opinion, and what they're doing in Baltimore, how they're covering it and how they report on it is an example of that. I don't think they're trying to go after the truth, because when you read alternative media, you see a different story. And I'm sure we're going to get into that later on.
But I mean, how much of it is even just the way that people are brought up and it being subconscious? Because if you're thinking about it and you want to dominate and control, and there's so many, I mean, this is not something I think that's been kept secret regarding all of the books by whether they're philosophers or people that have actually taken over other countries and, hundreds of years ago and all of these things, that how much is it just as opposed to stepping in and forcing people to do it at that point, but it would make a lot more sense. If you're thinking of a way that you obviously want to maintain control over a country, and especially with the way the United States does things. So we've talked about this before. Instead of just coming straight up as a dictator, they give you the illusion of freedom. They try to make you think that you have a lot to lose. Not that I'm saying you don't, but to make sure or ensure that the majority of people don't stand up. So what about the fact that by influencing people's beliefs, that part of the reason why they go along with a lot of these stories is not just the fact that there may be pressure at the top, and I'm sure that's part of it too, because a lot of people don't fall into that whole thing. But what about all the people that do? So it may even be a combination of, okay, well, you have the fear aspect and you have people that are at the top, and whether it's fear of losing their careers or, not losing their money or, even getting into more serious levels of possibly, bodily harm or hurting their families or even potentially murder. But I would think a lot of the people, it may also be part of the upbringing and conditioning. So it even makes it harder on top of it. So when I'm talking about government media and kids are growing up a certain way and trying to be, they're exposed to Common Core, government schools, all of this indoctrination, they're going to be less apt in general. I mean, there's a lot of people that are going to rebel to that, but in general, they may be less apt to rebel against that and to just kind of conform and take the government's word for a lot of things, as opposed to kind of have a force, do it because of fear or force, although I think that factors into it as well. But I would think it's probably a combination of both there.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. It'd be kind of tough to. I mean, when I was growing up, my dad taught me that, police had the right to shoot you.
Well, and just to explore that a little, when he said that they had the right to shoot you, and the word right is very subjective, and then you have positive and negative rights, and now you have people that say, well, I have the right for somebody to get an education, or for somebody to give me medical treatment. So basically you have the right to force somebody else to do something, which, I don't believe that's a right. But so when you say that, what exactly do you mean in that context?
Well, that the officers are authorized, to use deadly force.
Well, that the government said, well, we passed a law that said it's okay. Right. Essentially.
And
that's not really a right. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but just right. As an aside, correct. When people think about rights, this is where things, of course, there's so many places where things are fucked up, but when you think about rights and what rights really are, rights are not things that the government says, oh, it's okay for you to do this, so you have the right to do that. And I think probably the majority of people believe that their rights come from government and that they're able to do certain things because the government says they can. So that would be something, where I have the right to do this because government said. Well, okay, you have the right in your mind to do something. You're able to do something because you have a bunch of people, with guns that are going to back you. and that's that's why you're able to do it.
Right, and he would contradict himself because he would also quote the Constitution, say you have the right to life and liberty, and giving someone the right to kill you,
right? But
the authority to kill you, and then saying you have the right to live. That doesn't. There's just okay.
Isn't that a big contradiction?
Not if you say it at different times. So so you don't contradict yourself at the time, then it's okay. But yeah, sure, it is a contradiction. If you have the right to live, what right does someone have to not let you live? Or the authority. It is a huge contradiction. So, okay, so I grew up being told this. So what was I really told? I was told to accept non-principled thoughts that were just rules. So they weren't really principles, right? They were just rules. Like, you can be free until a cop shoots you. And then, that's just the way it is. So, there's limitations on it. And then people have you ever talked about this to a conservative? They throw their hands up in the air.
That's like saying, though, that you have a right until the government decides you don't have it anymore. So it's all based on their discretion. And with police, it's even worse because they can just kind of, it's all interpretation. The same with the whole justice system.
Right. And you can't tell people, and people, like I said, if you tell that to a conservative, they just throw their hands up in the air, like you just don't get it. So people from poor neighborhoods, primarily black people, who try to argue that, they come down with this just condescending attitude that you just don't understand. I had a neighbor, or not really a neighbor, but a person I know, explained to me that it was okay to crush the homes in Paramore, and because the people really aren't doing much, and that's a bad area, and it's full of crime.
Was your neighbor Mr. Rogers?
Well, he's dead, so I don't talk to him anymore.
Probably not at the time.
Not as often. You liked the sweaters, didn't you?
Well,
why did he put the sweater?
When did he die? Because
oh man, 15 years ago or something.
Yeah,
You're gonna make me Google it now.
No, it's all right. We don't need to know exactly when Mr. Rogers died, but
he died a while ago. Captain Kangaroo was a bigger star, but Rogers.
Yeah, but he wasn't your neighbor. You had talked about neighbors, but sorry, go ahead.
No, the captain wasn't my neighbor. Exactly. That's a creepy storyline, isn't it? Wow.
Well,
what a bunch of dumb kids we were.
Neighbor. There was Eddie Murphy on Saturday Night Live with the Mr. Robinsons.
Oh my God, that was great. Holy cow, those are great skits.
Can you say scum bucket?
No, he'd always talk about how what you have to do to keep from being mugged or something, or being scammed. It's awesome. He had great routines, but these people are troubled, and they're so brainwashed. We use that word a lot. We talk about that a lot, being brainwashed. But I mean, how can you not bring it up? Stop repeating what you've been told. We're older now. Think about it in a line of truthful, principled statements. If you have the right to live, if that is your right to live your life freely, okay, when you're not bothering anybody, harming somebody, okay, what right does somebody have to make a decision to take your life, okay, without, and the only justification is, I felt threatened. All right, that doesn't buy it. There's no way. There's no way you can use that as a means. And if you say, well, then you'll never be able to enforce any laws. Okay, well, I think that's not true. I think you can develop ways to do it. I just don't think they're tried. I think this is just allowed to go on because it's convenient. It really doesn't interrupt most people's lives. Unless you're one of the 2 million or 1.2 million? We have like 2 million prisoners, right? Unless you're one of those people.
I think it's more. I think it's 2.5 million at least.
Yeah.
Probably more. between 2.5 and 3 million.
Right. So it doesn't, as long as it doesn't interrupt your, lifestyle, then it's
And
okay.
I don't have prisoners. That's the United States government that has prisoners.
Did I say we?
Yeah,
I meant
you
me.
said we have prisoners. So you may have put those prisoners in there, but I ain't got nothing to do with it. I'm just being extorted.
What you did this weekend? What'd you do this weekend? I cut the yard, went shopping, got groceries, and captured a few more prisoners.
There you go.
Yeah, and now they're making military gear in my prison system.
For 5 cents an hour?
Well, it's overtime. But yeah. No, I think they
Time
get paid
and a half.
I think they get paid about
15.
70 cents an hour.
Yeah,
So
well, that's a big difference.
Yeah,
Can't even
and
buy
they
a fucking candy bar for that.
they don't give them clothing anymore. They got to buy it themselves. Remember three squares and a cot? Well, it ain't free anymore, guys. So that line of business just got rough.
Well, don't you have? Yeah, wasn't there something that you had said in Florida that people have to pay for jail?
Well, they're private. Yeah, well, they still.
No, but I mean, like, they have
support
to pay. Like, if they're for every day they're in jail,
Yeah.
they actually have to pay money. So if they don't have a job in jail, they're gonna end up back in jail because
Right.
they're gonna owe. It's
Mark
it's
Schmitter's
insane.
paying him off. Yeah, Mark Schmitter is paying for his 120 days in jail.
And how much did he owe altogether?
It's a couple $100, $1,200 or something. I don't know.
1,200. Well, there's a big difference between a couple hundred and 1,200.
It's
It's like
$400 or
$1,000.
Yeah, I mean, hey, he was there for 4 months. Come on, he can't just expect to ride that out for free.
And how much money did he make working there in his 4 months? $10.
He did some education programs he participated in. He's such a, he got put in jail for handing out, FIJA flyers, right?
Right.
So what does he do when he's in
there.
jail? He hands out FIJA flyers. He even gave them to the prison guards.
How did he get them in there?
His people were mailing them to him.
And they didn't like rip them out of the mail or whatever.
No, they probably couldn't. They didn't understand it. They went, "What is this about?"
They thought it was a water.
Jurors' rights. What? Come on. This crazy talk. Yeah, he was handing them out in jail. Hilarious. The guy was cracking me up when he was telling me this. When you go to visit people in jail, you don't get to actually see them. You in Orlando in the county jail, you go across the street to a small building that looks like a little prison, but not quite. And you go into this facility, and you get in a little booth that makes a phone booth look roomy, and you sit there and you see your friend or a loved one on a TV screen, and you talk to them over a phone, one of those 1950 phones, and that's how you visit people in jail today. If they're just friends, you don't get to see them physically, like in person. And since you're, everything's recorded, video.
Yeah. So you're talking about the ones with the glass, and you go and there's a phone on each end, and then you have the glass in between, and you talk between that.
You don't get that. You're not even in the building he's in. So.
Oh, you get the video.
Yeah.
Like the video conference where you pick up the phone and you could see them on. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, he's in the same little booth, a couple hundred yards away across the street, talking on his little video camera phone thing, and if there's a quality problem that day, you got to deal with it. They were pretty good about making sure the communication got back up, but holy cow, I mean it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. It's a great system. I'm not recommending you try it, but if you do need a job, there's one waiting for you in your local prison. jail.
Yeah. I don't know anybody could do that, because basically what would happen is
No interview needed.
if all these fucking and people use that excuse too. Well, if I wasn't doing it, then somebody else would do it. But if nobody did it, then if the job had that much of a stigma that people were saying, hey, we're not going to fucking do this. This is wrong. It's like, it should be considered as bad as taking a job where you're just going to go and beat people for no reason. And most people are not going to take that job. And the people that do are pretty fucked up. And that's how it should be viewed. And these people should be ostracized, and people in society shouldn't have anything to fucking do with them. And if you're stupid enough to, marry one of them, then you should stay away from them too. And really, and I'm serious with that. I'm not saying, when I say ostracize them, I don't mean like harm them or anything, but I mean just don't talk to them, just don't have anything to do with them, and fuck them. They can all have their own, little group there and just hang out with each other.
You're talking about the police, right?
Police, guards at, correctional institutes, most government agents and employees, all of them.
They do. Cops hang out with each other, or they just hang out alone.
It's because they have no other friends.
Well, a lot of them don't trust other people. I don't think they do. I mean, there's a lot of cops that are pretty normal, but there's a lot of them that are just way too edgy, and they have so many secrets. They don't want to talk about stuff, and it gets really weird. I had a friend who he lived in a nice town, and one day, this carved bear. There was a set of 3 carved bears a couple miles from his house, and one morning, one of these bears showed up in his yard, and just out of nowhere. So they contacted the people and said, we're not sure how, but we have your bear. So they contacted the police and told them, we got the bear, they can come get it. Well, the people didn't get it for years. And I don't know why, because it was probably pretty expensive. But, so we used to dress it up in football jerseys for parties and stuff like that. But he was pretty sure that it was a cop friend of his that got drunk and dumped it off on his lawn. And when he called the guy and said, hey, you know anything about this bear? The guy went stone cold and stopped talking to him for like 15 or 20 years after that. And he eventually got more information about it, but he was pretty sure this guy just got drunk and pinched the bear off the lawn and dropped it off on his lawn, when he was drunk, as a joke. But the guy was his friend, childhood friend, gone. Just done, And I can't say that he did it because I don't have the evidence of it, but it was just a really strange thing that, and this friend and him used to joke about the bear a little bit, and it wound up on his lawn. So, this is a childhood friend. You knew the guy, and boom, the guy's out of his life. Period. And he contacted a few times, and he never contacted him back. And I think these guys, a lot of times, have just crazy lives, and they kind of turtle up and hang out with each other, or kind of close off other people. And a lot of them are just waiting to get their 20 years of civil service and get their pensions for that. They're 'cause when you have a job, have you ever talked about if you just stay in it 20 more years and you'll be when you're working like for 5 years, do you talk about only 15 years to go and I'll get my retirement? Like, who does that? Government workers and the military. That's it. Government workers. No one else in the private sector talks like that unless you work for a cult.
Well, because it doesn't happen. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get more into some of the specifics definitely regarding some of the stories from last week and at least the last couple of weeks with what's going on in Baltimore, as well as what happened with a quote-unquote terrorist shooting where, from what I understand, one man was shot and the two suspected terrorists were killed that were part of a big ISIS plot or some whatever bullshit that they're trying to use to scare people. So we will be back to talk about all of those. Check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, and we'll be right back after this. A nonpartisan liberty for all.
When did that happen?
When I was in Ferguson, it happened many times. I was standing there. I was tear gassed. We were hit. We were trampled, and no one had any weapons. And I was there.
There was rioting, though.
Not in the places where I was. No.
Okay.
It's just not true. I'm not saying that no one rioted, but I'm saying that wasn't the overall case.
Right.
What I'm saying is it's too early to make connections here, and it's irresponsible, I think, to make a connection between
have the numbers.
Peaceful movement.
We have the police numbers from police officers being shot last year to this year. All right, and they've already reached that number. We're not even.
That doesn't prove that hands up don't shoot had to do with it.
All right.
No, I'm not saying that specifically. There's so much more to it. Well, that's part of it.
But there's no evidence of that. You just made that up out of the sky without
when you got politicians out there just waving their hands, just making comments about how the cops are bad or the cops are murdering too many black men. Come on, you got Al Sharpton out there, you got Reverend Jesse Jackson out there.
You haven't seen Reverend Jesse Jackson once. You're just pulling out the traditional straw men and talking points. You haven't seen name one time where you heard Jesse Jackson say that.
Even when the mayor of Baltimore, all right, came out and asked for Al Sharpton to come out. All right, what do you want Al Sharpton there for? He caused riots in Ferguson for crying out loud.
Final word. Mark,
when did Al Sharpton cause
go.
a riot in Ferguson?
His rhetoric when he went down there started a lot of problems.
Name one thing he said. You can't name one. That's why you're stuck right now. You can't name one.
No justice, no peace. I'm not stuck.
You're saying
the way he talks.
He didn't say no justice, no peace. You're just making things up.
No, the way he constantly talks
about
things
police. And when you don't have anything, you say Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton. The next it'll be fathers. You're just
that's
making
where it
things.
always is.
I'm going to hit pause on this. I will say that there are some families who were involved in this.
Well, when did that happen?
When I was in Ferguson, it happened many times. I was standing there. I was tear gassed. We were hit. We were trampled, and no one had any weapons. And I was there.
There was rioting, though.
Not in the places where I was. No.
Okay.
It's just not true. I'm not saying that no one rioted, but I'm saying that wasn't the overall case.
Right.
What I'm saying is it's too early to make connections here, and it's irresponsible, I think, to make a connection between
have the numbers.
Peaceful movement.
We have the police numbers from police officers being shot last year to this year. All right, and they've already reached that number. We're not even.
That doesn't prove that hands up don't shoot had to do with it.
All right.
No, I'm not saying that specifically. There's so much more to it. Well, that's part of it.
But there's no evidence of that. You just made that up out of the sky without
when you got politicians out there just waving their hands, just making comments about how the cops are bad or the cops are murdering too many black men. Come on, you got Al Sharpton out there, you got Reverend Jesse Jackson out there.
You haven't seen Reverend Jesse Jackson once. You're just pulling out the traditional straw men and talking points. You haven't seen name one time where you heard Jesse Jackson say that.
Even when the mayor of Baltimore, all right, came out and asked for Al Sharpton to come out. All right, what do you want Al Sharpton there for? He caused riots in Ferguson for crying out loud.
Final word. Mark,
when did Al
final word.
Sharpton cause a riot in Ferguson?
His rhetoric when he went down there started a lot of problems.
Name one thing he said. You can't name one. That's why you're stuck right now. You can't name one.
No justice, no peace. I'm not stuck.
You're saying
the way he talks.
He didn't say no justice, no peace. You're just making things up.
No, the way he constantly talks.
I'm asking everybody to go home and to clear the streets. And tomorrow, everybody's going to meet at the church so that we can figure out so that we don't lose focus on what it is that we're supposed to be doing.
Has this surprised you today? None of us heard about this.
It's disappointing. We're just hours out of the funeral. The family is just hours after putting their son to rest. To come just a few blocks away from where we had the service is disappointing. And I'm hoping to bring some calm and to bring our young people back into focus as to what we're really marching for.
What do you say to do that, Pastor? What do you say to bring them, bring calm?
This is not what the family asked for. Today of all days, the family was very clear that this was a day of sacred closure in the funeral. So for us to come out of the burial and walk into this is absolutely inexcusable. I'm asking every young person to go back home. Tomorrow night we'll have a community meeting for us to really recalibrate because peace is the call and the order of the day.
Do you think that this is just frustration and anger
anger, or do you think it's much more than that? What do you
It's
think?
frustration, anger, and it's disrespect to the family. The family was very clear. We've been saying it all along. Today, there is absolutely no protest, no demonstration that we go back into the street on tomorrow.
Pastor, what are you hearing? We're hearing it's not just in this area.
No,
but North Avenue.
No, we've got
downtown.
We have a team of men from the church going to North Avenue now to pull back those young people who are absolutely out of control, so that we can bring some order. This is a peaceful movement, and we plan on maintaining that order.
There's discussion about them moving toward downtown again.
Yes, we have a line of gentlemen from the Nation of Islam who are going to build a human wall, as well as men from the Christian church making that human wall to let the men know that they've got to send these children back.
Where is that happening?
It's downtown is what I'll say.
So all across downtown?
And from North Avenue to downtown, those hot spots, we're pulling everybody back so that we can have calm and order. Violence is not the answer for justice.
Pastor, you're saying this is a peaceful protest, but we've seen people, demonstrators, agitators, however you want to refer to them, throw rocks, bricks.
No, today what has happened this afternoon is not peaceful, and it does not reflect the spirit and the heart of this movement. This is a movement of peace. We're calling for justice, not for vengeance and not for violence. This does not represent the Gray family, nor does it represent the last 7 days of peaceful protests. And so we're asking all of those who are participating to go back home. Tomorrow we start afresh and anew and stay focused on justice for this family and justice for Baltimore.
Have you spoken to the mayor?
I have not spoken to the mayor.
And where do you go from here? So you're getting your own people
My
out?
focus is not the mayor. My focus is not the police commissioner. My focus is these black children on the streets. I don't want them arrested, wounded, or tear gassed. I want them all to go back home.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. Call in at 702-470-7664 or Skype in. Username Nonpartisan Liberty for All.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and I am back. I totally lost my train of thought there because that, I guess, bumper, or whatever you want to call it, was kind of too quick there. But I am back anyway. Thank you for tuning in on this Tuesday, May 12th, 2015. And our first show back after being away last week for my paying job, which was fun, I guess. Although I wish I could have been doing my shows at night, but being on a totally different time zone, that probably would have fucked me all up and wouldn't have been able to do what I was supposed to do, I guess, for my paying job. But one of the things too, and I don't know if other people experience this, and I'm thinking it's worse when you go from the West Coast to the East Coast. Because when you go from the East Coast to the West Coast, so you get 3 hours back. And you get it at that time. But when you go from the West Coast to the East Coast, you lose your 3 hours. It's 3 hours ahead. And then you don't get them back till you go home. So I guess when you go home, it's better. But going there is not fun. And when I had got there, because my check-in wasn't until like 4 o'clock, and I got a really cheap flight, and it got in, like 7 in the morning, Orlando time, which was really like 4 Las Vegas time, and I had no sleep, and I didn't sleep for 24 hours. That was a lot of fun. Anyway, I'm sure you all care very much about that, but there are more important things to talk about, and we are back here on Nonpartisan Liberty for All Radio. I hope you did not miss us too much, or the opposite. We're happy that we weren't on for the past week. It's really only been a week, but with that extra show on Thursday, I guess it's been 4 shows that we've been going for. But today we are talking all about the government media and how it's up to its exploitation or exploitations of various things that go on to push government agenda, again, which is pretty much what they do all the time. It stems, in my opinion anyway, or what I see, and I think this is something that most people, whether how they feel about government, unless they're just fucking idiots, will admit that all politicians, and I don't know what it was like years and years ago, but I'm sure it's always been this way. It's just you probably didn't see it the same way that you see it today, because you had things like, or didn't have things like TV and the internet, obviously, and all these other things. So I think as technology going from, radio to TV to internet and all of those things, that as that had happened, it made it easier to see a lot of these things, I guess. But anyway, and I guess, Pete, you probably have a different perspective there. I mean, not a different perspective, but more insight, probably seeing more presidents, at least live at the time, although I think there's probably a lot of information out there that, again, especially with the internet, but libraries and all these things that people can go and look up themselves. But either way, point being, I kind of rambled just there, but the point being is that when it comes to exploiting something, and again, this is another reoccurring, I guess, theme that we talk about all the time, because I almost look at it, and I don't know how you would define this, but it's almost like part of government. It's like part of their job. It should be in their job description to exploit things to get what they want. It's like saying that, okay, this is our goal, and then how do we get to that goal? What can we use to lie about and exploit and convince people? Because that's what a lot of it is. It's manipulation. It's, we want this. And usually the thing they want is only because it benefits them in getting reelected or in some kind of financial aspect or some job in the future or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely people would not do this stuff if they didn't have some kind of benefit coming out of it, right? I mean, you can do charity work, a little bit. You do too much of it and you don't have time for your life, taking care of yourself, your family, and relaxing, So you can give a good amount of time, but these people are here for work, and some of them are, have aspirations of, higher things, higher offices, appointments, political aspirations, okay? And none of it is there to generate an economy, but it's there for them to benefit from by working for it. And if people really didn't, I mean, it's not the favorite job on the planet, but if they really didn't like working for the government and doing government work, they wouldn't do it. Or you'd have to pay them so much money, it'd be crazy to get them to do it. But, usually it's a job that doesn't take a lot of exertion. But it is kind of boring, so it has its doldrums. But they do it because, they're getting a benefit out of it.
Well, let's look at something else.
I won't say anything.
Yeah, how many jobs do you know of? Or, companies with similar jobs that have the huge amount, and I don't know what the percentage is. We could probably figure it out just by looking at people's ages. But how many companies have that many people over, 65, 70 years old. That's got to tell you something. I'm not trying to put down, older people, but I mean, you have people in their 70s that are still in Congress, and it's not for the money neither. No. So, I mean, how hard can their fucking job be if you're 75 years old and hey, I can go to work every day and I'm fine? And
well, I mean, it's when you get congressmen, that's a fabulous life. They'll complain about how hard it is to do certain things, like campaign and travel all the time, be on the road, but they must want to do it. There must be an aspect about it that they want to do, and there's a lot of opportunity for them afterwards, which happens, very often, But a thought I had was, there are people who benefit from a larger government, right? And even before people themselves, human beings would work for the government, for there to be a government, it must benefit somebody else, because the government doesn't do things for itself. It's supposed to do things for everybody, right? And so if it wasn't something that some people wanted, people with money, people with power, it wouldn't exist. Not for 10 minutes. And I don't like to call people stupid anymore or berate them, but I have to say, if you truly believe, okay, because I believe if you think government is really doing good work, if you truly believe that, you have very low standards. All right. So it just must be some other reason, like it's convenient to say, it helps you socially, you don't want to argue about it. But to sit there and say it's a very beneficial thing and point to all the things that government did, like build roads and dams and, all these great things they established, like nuclear weapons, nerve gas, killer arsenals, and they think this is a ridiculous argument. And what they don't look at is the whole picture, right? They don't take in a larger view of evidence and really sit back and look at it and say, gee, nuclear weapons, if I don't have them, someone else will, and they'll use them against me, like we used them against Japan, right? But to build as many as they have, when it's so overkill, it must be for the money. Somebody must be making a hell of a lot of money, right? Building nuclear weapons, and they must need a big government that needs these. So it's easy because they take other people's money to build this big government, and then they get a lot of money from this big government. And you could say that's a crazy argument. You're just totally out of space here. But it literally would not exist if it didn't benefit people, enough people, the right people, and people who have influence. And if you want to take in the bigger scope of evidence, look at lobbyists, right? They make all the laws. Okay, I said all the laws, right? That's an exaggeration. They make most of the laws, right? You don't have a gazillion lines of tax code because it's there to make it obvious, right? No, it's to make sure that certain people can benefit from it. So they hide all the intricacies of the benefits in a pile of code that just drones on and on and on about the same thing.
Well, government is just very strange in the aspect that they want to bring in as much money as possible, but they don't generate any profit. They're like a non-profit, but
parasite.
They want to, it's just so weird because they want to spend as much money as possible, but it's the way in which they want to spend it and how they want to use it to justify more and more money.
It's, You know, it's funny when they call it not-for-profit, right? It sure does make a lot of money go through it for something that doesn't make any profit. It has an awful lot of investment. So, you know, and what's really ironic is a lot of government agencies are actually private corporations hidden as public, servants. So enjoy that one. That's a real part of the irony.
Yeah, that's true as well, but it's still, from what I understand, I mean, it's something, because people look at it in a sense like, well, yeah, they want to cut money. They don't want to spend all this money. And it doesn't work that way in the different silos and departmentally, where you have everyone has their own has their own budget, has their own amount of money that they want to bring in. So, like common sense would tell you, okay, excuse me, why would the government want to put more people in jail? It costs them more money. But they don't look at it like that. You can't look at the government like you would any type of company that's trying to make a profit, because one, they're not. They don't give a fuck about it. They have money with them, because essentially what money comes in, it has to be spent. And the more money that they spend, the more money that they're able to justify later that they need more. It's just, and I might not be the best person to explain it, but it's just totally different in a fucked up way, and how they're able to structure the government as one of the biggest scams there is.
I don't think that needs much more illumination on it, right? They don't make money. They just literally, like you said, look for more ways to get a hold of more money.
Well, it's like a bank that, gives out loans, in a sense, where they really don't create anything. They just make the money off the interest, in a sense. Of course, it's even a lot worse, because at least you agree to that, and you're benefiting somehow. Although a lot of times people are getting ripped off, but still at the same time, you're borrowing money, you're paying back interest on it. But it's a similar thing. Whereas nothing's created, it's we're taking in your money and we're just spending it all. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Just look at the deficit. And look at the debt and look at the deficit. Look at the direction it's going. And then look at the rest of the economy, what's happening to it. The government spending is flying up, and the GDP growth is getting hammered. And it doesn't matter how hard people work. I was watching the news. This is kind of off the topic, but Kaiser was talking about this. He had a graph. It showed productivity versus personal wealth, and worker productivity is going up like crazy. People are becoming more and more productive. A lot of it's, I guess, because of automation and ingenuity with computers and other systems, right? But we're hyper productive now. We can produce so much stuff so fast. It's great, and it just keeps going up. So personal, worker productivity has been increasing for decades, and however, the wealth started, the curve of wealth of what is going towards people has, real wages, okay, have been declining ever since we went off the gold standard. So the measurement that shows real earnings and wages is not, it used to be lockstep with the productivity curve. And now it's dropping way off of that curve. We're still getting more productive, okay? We're producing more and more. We're getting less and less for it. And everybody feels that. You don't even have to, get a graph out to explain that. But, the graph helps because showing it against productivity is a real eye-opener. hyper-productive, really not getting much more for it. That doesn't make any sense. Right? You work hard, you produce, you earn those gains. This doesn't demonstrate that.
So I kind of got a little off topic here, but I think it still relates a lot to the main issue that I wanted to talk about, although I want to talk more about specifics of some instances that apply to this whole exploitation by government media, which I believe is dictated, of course, at the government level. And I don't know. This is the one thing that, and people love to do this too, is when they talk about whether it's conspiracy theory, which again, the whole world was created to try to discredit people that were, attacking the government when it came to the Kennedy assassination. But I even mean in terms of, anything that you can't really 100% prove, or the whole thing with the government is obviously they're going to do the best to hide as much information as possible. So at what point does circumstantial evidence and more of it make your conclusion, a valid conclusion to have? It doesn't mean that, okay, well, we're 100% sure. But if you look at any criminal case, I mean, it's okay in a criminal case to do that. But when it comes to anything against the government, it's not. And then at the same time is you cannot get that information. So how do people expect that to happen anyway? It makes it a lot easier for the government to do whatever they want because they're able to hide all this information and protect anybody who has it or have them killed or whatever they do. And at the same time, again, if anybody comes out that actually speaks out against the government and somehow lives, they just, they're nuts, they're whatever. So this whole idea that I used to hear, well, if this was really happening, we'd hear about it. Like, well, we hear about it all the time. And then the people that come out and say something about it, look what happens to them. So this whole idea that, and I'm not saying every fucking thing that comes out is true, and you have some stuff that I think is just way out there. And, but I'm seeing, I feel like I'm seeing too many people go the other way, going to just totally distancing themselves against anything that they feel they can't prove. And again, which is hard. You look at right away, the advantage is totally, you have no advantage. The advantage is totally on the side of the government because you don't have access to any of this information. So right there, it's always going to make it, nearly impossible to be able to gain any information anyway. But I feel like, yes, there are some things that I wouldn't even bother with, and I think they're a waste of time anyway, whether they're true or not. And I would say that I'm probably someone in the middle. So you have people that I would call, I don't want to call them extremists, but that are on the, if you take like a line, right? So you have one side or whatever, Alex Jones, I guess, right? Would that be if you're talking about someone on one extreme side, I guess maybe you put him, right? We can use him as an example, whatever.
Sure.
And then on the other side, you put, I don't fucking know, somebody that works for the government that's probably just a liar anyway. But that person that thinks, the government does no wrong, and actually, let me take a step back here, because I'm thinking more of liberty people, because you have in the quote unquote liberty community, you have people that totally distance themselves away from anything that can be called a conspiracy. And it seems like whether they even believe it or not, because a lot of the things that they believe are pretty similar, but they don't want that stigma, because especially if they're somewhat public figure or in liberty media or something like that, they kind of want to stay away from it. So you have people on that side, and then you have kind of the people on the Alex Jones side, and I would say I'm somewhere in the middle, because I don't believe everything that especially somebody like Alex Jones puts out there. There may be some, I think it's always based in some kind of truth, but then it's based on conclusions based on that truth, which may or may not be valid, or but who knows. But I think what I'm seeing to a certain extent is you have, and really, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself in a sense, because a lot of the stuff that I'm going to go into in detail isn't really anything that you would even really call conspiracy theory anyway. It's just pretty much just facts that have come out there. So we kind of got into a whole nother thing here, but that's fine. But just briefly before we get into that, so I mean, I think when you're specifically talking about people that you consider in the liberty community, I think you have a big divide there, and I think that there's things that there's valid information out there. There's a lot of common things that make sense, and I think to dismiss them, I think does it some injustice to just say, well, anything that comes into here, I'm just going to totally dismiss it as conspiracy theory, and I mean, everybody has their own opinions there, and they're entitled to them. But I think one thing the majority of people within that line would probably agree with on either side is that the government does do bad things, and that they're capable of a lot of things. So who the fuck knows? Now, yeah, I mean, without really having that much information about it, it's hard to sit there and totally take it seriously. But on the other side, to just totally dismiss it, and then not only dismiss it, but do it in a way where it's like, I don't want to be associated with those people. They're, nutcases. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, sticking inside the liberty community, there's like you said, there's a couple different sides, and some people just focus on issues and they dig into them, and the issue doesn't directly smack of conspiracy. But on the other hand, with cases of people in the fully in the what is it? Not juror rights, but the oh my God, I'm stammering on your show too much, Dave, because I wasn't expecting to use this as an example of it. But people who are interested in getting the courts back to natural law courts out of a corporate statute court, they know that there's a fix on. They know there's a big conspiracy, but they're focusing on attacking it through rules of law. So they don't talk too much or try to focus on the personal people involved in it. They kind of approach it as an issue base, but it's obviously a gigantic conspiracy that's not. It doesn't really have to be formulated into a plan they hand out, right? It's just a system was set up and established and is supported at different levels. And if you start making any kind of ground at one level, the next level kicks in. So if you're local, it'll go higher to a county or state level. They'll come in, and if that gets ugly, they'll bring in federal level people, to resolve it, to apply pressure. So, so when you test this, now some people just say, well, this is a natural reaction, to support the law. But they're not supporting law. They're supporting their gangster, monopoly. But the people working on the case don't focus on that as much. They know it's there, but you're right. They won't talk about that as much, or they just keep, honing in on what they can find out with information and do things through, they're trying to counter the system using the system. And if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you don't believe that works. But
I don't. It's my belief that doesn't work has nothing to do with Lord of the Rings. I've never seen it, so. But
well, you can't use the tool of evil to fight evil.
Right, but I'm sure it was a wonderful. Was it a trilogy, or did they?
It was a trilogy, right? Plus The Hobbit, which was not a trilogy until they made it into a 3-part movie.
I think they actually made a porno about that too, like the Lord of the Things or something.
What don't they make porno about?
I don't know. I'm actually not a porno expert, but occasionally they'll have like these HBO specials or something, and they'll, like they showed a clip from Edward Penis Hands.
Right, exactly. They do all these parodies.
Yeah. So
it's like
the Sopranos. The Firm, they really didn't have to change anything, I guess. The Tom Cruise movie, The Firm.
That's kind of dull.
They could just keep the name. But on that note, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I finally want to get to, because we kind of got caught up a little off track here. I want to get to these specifics because I have a lot of stuff. And I don't know what your opinion is on a lot of stuff, and I probably watched more of it than you did. But just like how they're taking these issues that are, I think, depending on which one, but legitimate issues, and exploiting them to fit into this agenda of more government control and all of these things, and just more government in general. And it's crazy. So we will talk all about that when we get back. Your thoughts are welcome. I don't actually have the phone line right now, but you can Skype into the show, username Nonpartisan Liberty for All. Just send us a contact request if you would like to join the show, and we'll be right back after this. Nonpartisan Liberty for All Radio.
We've had a strategy for countering violent extremism for about 3 years now. Is one of the problems it hasn't really been implemented?
I would disagree with that. Since I've been secretary, I have personally participated in engagements with community leaders in the Islamic community and elsewhere. I've been to New York with Deputy Commissioner Miller, who I know is coming on, Boston, Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, and other places where I personally meet with community leaders about countering violent extremism in their communities. That has to be part of our efforts in this new phase.
And I think are the local communities doing enough?
The local communities, it varies. Some are very tight-knit. Some do a very good job of knowing what's happening in their neighborhoods, in their communities. Others are still a work in progress, but just in the last year, I'm seeing progress. We see success stories in law enforcement reports, but there's more we need to do.
What about the social media campaign? You look at their social media campaign, and it is really quite extraordinary. Senator Cory Booker said our efforts are laughable.
Well, I would disagree with that, but it's important to remember that a lot of the counter-narrative needs to come from within the community. And so when I meet with community leaders, I'm asking them, what are we doing to counter this narrative? It is slick, it is effective, but we need to get the message out. And that's not necessarily a government objective, a government mission. That has to come from within the community. It has to come from Islamic leaders who, frankly, can talk the language better than the federal government can. And so when I meet with community leaders, Islamic leaders. It's one of the things that we urge them to do. Some have begun it. We've seen some good progress, but there's a lot more that can be done.
Hello, I'm Todd Starnes. Last weekend's terror attack in Garland, Texas has sparked a national debate over free speech. Political pundits and the mainstream media say Pamela Geller got what she asked for when she hosted that Muhammad cartoon competition. Even more repulsive are the conservative commentators on television and radio who were spouting off from the same talking points. They say the Prophet Muhammad is off limits to mockery. They say Miss Geller put people in harm's way, as if she's the bad guy. Got a load of this actual tweet from the Associated Press last night. Pamela Geller at AP headquarters, where she said she had no regrets over Texas cartoon contest that left 2 dead. Yeah, 2 dead Muslim terrorists. Come on! Pamela Geller is not the one putting people in harm's way. It's the Islamic jihadist. And please spare me the left's righteous indignation. Where was all that outrage when Hollywood was turning Jesus into a homosexual, when Mary was smeared in elephant dung, when Mormons were mocked on Broadway? But that's art. Heaven help the person who disparages the Prophet Muhammad, though. The mainstream media seem to hate the very amendment that allows them to get a weekly paycheck. So I want to make one thing very clear. This side of the Fox News corner of the world, we stand steadfast in defense of the First Amendment. It protects all speech, including offensive speech, especially offensive speech. And to carve out a special rule to protect the Prophet Muhammad would send our nation on a slippery slope to Sharia law. And that's my commentary. Be sure to check out my column and newsletter at foxnews.com. Have a great weekend, and don't forget, Sunday is Mother's Day. Give your mom a call. Thanks for watching. I'm Todd Starnes.
There has been a shooting at a free speech event featuring cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. 2 gunmen armed with automatic weapons opened fire outside the Curtis Colwell Centre. The suspects are dead and a police officer has been hurt. There are concerns the gunmen's vehicles may contain explosives. On the phone with us, CNN producer Christopher Lett, who was at today's event in Garland, Texas, just outside Dallas. Christopher, right now you're inside the building. What more can you tell me?
I'm no longer inside the building, John. They've moved us to a media staging area just down the street from the building.
Okay, so explain what has happened in the last few hours. These 2 alleged gunmen in the vehicles drove up to this center that was hosting this exhibit of the Prophet Muhammad, and then a gunfire erupted.
Exactly. So, according to police, they opened fire. They were engaged by the law enforcement there on standby. From there, they told everyone who was still inside the event to go to the auditorium and usher the people who were outside to go back in. SWAT teams corralled all the people to get out. And as we moved on, we just waited until those who actually witnessed anything were separated, taken for their statements, and those who were there as guests who did not witness anything were taken to an undisclosed location. Media like myself were then sent to a staging area just down the street.
Okay, and what do you know about this keynote speaker who was advertised as having a prominent role at this exhibit?
Yes. So he is a politician from the Netherlands, Geert Wilders. Correct me if I'm wrong on the pronunciation, but he definitely had some things to say, basically echoing his solidarity with the movement to protect free speech in the West. A few of the things he said I can tell you now. He said, "We will never allow barbarism. We will never allow barbarism." I know my own experience and how dangerous it is. He spoke about how he's on the death lists of Al-Qaeda. And he said new leadership is required to defend our freedom of speech and resist the ongoing Islamization of the West.
Okay, so Geert Wilders was on this Al-Qaeda hit list. We have the wanted poster which Al-Qaeda put out featuring Geert Wilders. So he was meant to be one of the key speakers at this exhibit of the Prophet Muhammad. And of course, as we know, any depiction of the Prophet Muhammad is considered blasphemy by Muslims. We do not know the identities or the ethnicity of those who were in fact involved in the shooting, who were driving the cars, who are now dead. But we do know that right now their vehicle is surrounded by police because there are concerns that there could in fact be explosives inside that vehicle.
Promoting the ideas of true freedom and liberty, nonpartisan liberty for all radio with Dave Bourne.
Nonpartisan liberty for all, and we are back. I feel like I'm rusty back on my not like my name is Rusty, like from or the what was that fucking movie, National Lampoon's Vacation, European Vacation. I guess for all of them it was Rusty. Anyway, I don't feel like the character Rusty. I feel like after it was only a week too. I don't know. So I apologize for that. But we are back on this Tuesday. I'm like hiccuping with our Orlando co-host Pete Murtha, who joins us every Tuesday live from Orlando. And we are talking about the exploitation of pretty much everything by government media. You know, it's funny. Today, I don't want to get into too much details regarding work, but there's like, say, some break room with a TV there, and people are watching CNN, and I just think to myself, do these people actually, like, what do they believe in what they hear? Is it just, okay, well, whatever, most of this is bullshit, but I don't know, some of it's true. I don't know what level that people actually believe this shit. I know that the ratings have gone down on all of these major or so-called major, 24-hour news stations now. How much of that is just because of them, or you have all these other channels and ways to entertain besides who wants to watch the fucking news channels. But I do think the fact that they're losing a lot of credibility and they all say the same shit. It's like they're reading off the same talking points, and there have been, I guess, some polls supposedly that people are losing faith in the news, but who knows what to fucking believe. If I had to guess, and Peter, I don't know, what you would think about this, but if I had to guess, I would say that you have a certain percentage of people, probably not a lot, but enough to be able to control elections and get people elected and do all of those things, because I would say you probably only need 20 to 25%. So even if you have something like 25% of the people buy into this shit, whether it's, CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or any other, national fucking news, even 60 Minutes now, I don't even know about them. So, who knows what the percentage is, but if I had to guess, I would say it's something like that. But I think it's definitely, because I think they are very, very calculated, that it's enough where they know that, okay, we still have enough ignorant people to be able to push a lot of this through, get their support, and get them to vote us in. So it makes it look like, people actually support us and want us to be elected to office?
Complicated question. Can you rephrase that a little bit? I mean, I think my mind's wandering all around on it.
Maybe we can come back to that, but it's just more the percentage of people that really view mainstream media. But before we probably get into that, because we've kind of been, I guess, delaying really what I want to talk about since last week. And unfortunately, I probably would have been a lot more passionate about this last week when I was watching this and just getting frustrated and seeing the bullshit that it really was. But so last week, and I had mentioned I happen to be in Florida. So at the hotel, they have some cable channels, but not a lot. And, after working, having my time all out of whack, I pretty much, just went back to the hotel, turned the TV on. I'm like, well, what the fuck is on anyway? Let me see the bullshit that they're talking about in the news, because two of the major things that were going on last week, and Pete, please feel free if you think I'm, missing anything or you have something that you want to address as well. But one, of course, was what continued in Baltimore that had happened the week before. And I don't know how much were quote-unquote riots still going on. It didn't seem like a lot. A lot of it seemed like, and we had talked about this, the prior week exploitation where you had a certain group of people that kind of came in just as looters that really didn't give a fuck about anything else. And the majority of people were just there protesting. And of course, the media tries to exploit that. But one of the things that really kind of bothered me, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but if they do, then they, whatever, so be it. So you had I guess it was a reverend, and Pete, I know you didn't see this, but I don't know if you recall, I had mentioned this to you, that there was a reverend and there was a Muslim, I don't know, imam or something. Where that name comes from, I have no idea. But I'm assuming it has nothing to do with actual mom, that it's in Arabic or something. It means something totally different. It just happens to sound the same. Right. I would hope. Or the imam. Yeah, it's the mom who she's doing all that ecstasy, all that but they got together to have some kind of, I wouldn't even know what I'd call it, a protest. It was something like that. And when I say that, I mean that in a positive sense. I don't mean that they were doing anything violent or something like that, but they were just showing that they, I guess, were, and maybe I'm saying it's different from a protest because it seemed like they just had some kind of agenda that they were trying to push. And see, this is where, not just with this, with all of these, anything that's considered some kind of political movement or could even be contributed as anti-government or something like that, that it's being kind of twisted and exploited to meet the goals and agenda of the politicians. And you have them all infiltrate you. I mean, it's crazy the way that these political parties and political operatives get involved in this shit. And they did it here in Las Vegas as well when there was a protest for Ferguson, and we had Kelly Patterson, a Nevada cop block, friend of the show, on, and he talked a little about it as well. But So you have them. And first of all, I guess we should go back to, I'm assuming everybody knows what happened in Baltimore, but it was another story of a man being murdered by the police. There were peaceful protests initially. Somehow those turned into somewhat violent, but not the majority of the people. And who knows how many people came from other places and were encouraged by, police provocateurs and things like that. But so there was some riots, fires, whatever. Not that I'm saying that's okay. It seemed very exaggerated, but I don't know. I wasn't there. But from what I seen, it looked like it was something that was not only exaggerated, but calculated as well. That's kind of, it's almost like, because the protests were going on, I think, for a week, and then the funeral happened, and then after that, that's when some of the rioting stuff happened. But from what I understood, there was no, and there's video of it, but there was no violence or destruction of property or anything like that. And then after the funeral, some people came in and whatever. So who knows, again, how much of that was, provocateurs, maybe even paid provocateurs or instigators or whatever. Now, I'm not saying it's okay just because, you're instigating or doing something, but how many of them were actually, government agents in there doing a lot of this stuff, and we have no idea. And that was a lot of the speculation in Ferguson as well. So you have that whole thing going on. Again, another issue stemming from a 25-year-old shot and killed by the police. His neck was snapped, and I think it was even worse than that. Not that his neck was even snapped. It was like his spine was like not connected to his vertebrae or something. Something very disturbing that just doesn't normally happen. It sounds like something where, a car runs over your neck or something, or you're dropped from like a huge building. I'm not, a medical expert or far from it, but you don't really hear a lot of injuries like that in general. Unless it's, like I said, stuff like that, falling off of roofs or something, or maybe even a football injury, but not something like that. So I guess he had been killed, murdered essentially, and you had protests after the funeral. That's when it started. Supposedly there was some violence. Places got burned down. There was looting, that whole thing. So after that, had happened, you've had, I guess, people that call themselves community leaders. Now, first of all, it seems like with a lot of protests, and Pete, please feel free to chime in with any thoughts, but it seems like in a lot of these protests that you have political operatives or people with political agendas that kind of step in and try to take them over, as opposed to, you think about just organic kind of protests that happen where people are just like, okay, we're tired of this. We're going to go out there, we're going to protest or do whatever. And so you had one of the scenes that I had seen there that I was trying to mention earlier is you had a reverend and a Muslim, whatever. What do they call? Oh, the imam, as I had said. Right.
Imam. Right.
Like E.T.'s mom. So they what?
But it's M, not E.
It's imam, isn't it?
Imam. I don't know.
That's what they call it. I don't think it's
I-M-A.
Yeah, I don't think it's spelled that way. I don't think it's spelled like imam, but like
it's M-A-M.
that's how they say it.
M-A-N.
Imam, like iPad.
Yeah, I'm so interested in that I'm not even looking it up how to spell it. I don't care. But I've heard it said on the news. It's imam, so they're probably saying it wrong, but on purpose. But
Maybe.
That's what I'm going to go with.
But so anyway, they were, I don't know what the fuck they were doing. They just, hey, I'm the neighborhood pastor and I'm the fucking neighborhood imam, so we're just gonna come out here, and you kind of think about it, like, who the fuck are you anyway? That it's almost like they're kind of hijack, and you see this all the time, and this is not just with, if you want to call this a black protest or whatever, but it's with all of this shit where politicians or people with political agendas, I don't know necessarily like politicians, but they have political agendas. I would call them political operatives. And they come in and say, and this is where, to me, I kind of got fucked up, because they're talking about, well, they're totally changing the issue here of police and people not to be able to have any type of freedom in their communities at all. Not like, depending how you look at it. I mean, I don't think you have any freedom, period, but, I guess there are levels of freedom. So you're talking about the police exploiting people, beating people, harassing them, all these things that police do, all these things that you don't even hear about it in the fucking news anymore, because all you're hearing about is murders. So they're forgetting about all of these other things that go on, even besides beatings, like the harassments and the, having your rights violated and having drugs planted on you or being arrested when you haven't even committed a crime. It's all of these things that police do. And of course, murder is the extreme, when somebody gets killed by a cop, and obviously, but it goes way beyond that. And I think just focusing on the murder, I'm not saying that murder shouldn't be focused on, because of course they should, but it almost downplays everything else that they do, that they're allowed to get away with everything else. Go, well, at least we didn't kill him.
Yeah, that's a consolation, right?
Well, yeah, and I could say that, in my case, which wasn't even that bad, but just having, bruises from being thrown around, like, oh, that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal. We violated your rights, whatever. I mean, at least we didn't kill you. So, that goes back to the wife being married to her husband, and, well, my husband's not as bad as yours because your husband killed you. Mine just beats me. I mean, does that make it any, less of a crime, or does it make it, you could say, well, it's worse, but it is what it is.
They're trying to downplay it in the public. You see that a lot, right? They'll report something that happens, and they'll make it look like it's just, and the police do that when they come out and make, statements about it, that it was routine, there was nothing here any different than a normal day, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, this is a routine, murder here. We just, They looked at us wrong. We had to shoot.
They're having a tough time doing that lately. You know,
not like you think, and that's another thing we can talk about as well. You know, this is so fucked up because you hear these people like now they're talking about, oh, what about the white guy who got killed, and what about the, and they're totally forgetting the fact that out of all the black people that got killed, most of them you don't hear about them neither. This is not like oh yeah, all the black people are getting all the attention, all these black people that got killed. So the fucking 0.1%, you know, that got killed, 2 or 3, ended up getting some attention after people had to riot to get it, and now it's like, oh yeah, oh they only care about a black. I mean, it's just it's an asinine statement. It really is, because the majority of black people, no one fucking pays attention when they get killed by the cops neither. It's just been turned totally into a divide and conquer thing. But so I guess getting to my point with this reverend and this imam or whatever the fuck his name is, not his name, but whatever. It's like priest, I guess. Like, I'm a priest and I'm an imam. Right?
Well, they're two different things, but
yeah, but I mean,
going with it.
Right, but it's their religious like thing, right? Whatever.
Yeah,
I don't care.
You know, that's one of the titles. I'm sure. It's not
yeah. That's what I mean. Like they're imam, and they're, you know, somebody's a priest or somebody's a rabbi or somebody's a goat herder or no, but so they were interviewing these guys on CNN, and of course CNN, you know, going with the same shit, exploiting all this shit like they do, and they're asking them, well, what do you guys want? What do you think we need to do to heal the community? So they totally changed this fucking shit from the government and the police fucking killing people, harassing people, being all in their business like the Nazi fucks that they are, and turning it into, oh, well, you know, we need to help start black businesses and give them discounts, and the government needs to, you know, subsidize all that stuff. Then you got, of course, Al Sharpton coming out and talking about, we need to federalize the police. And like, what the fuck are you talking about?
That made me take notice. That was hard to kind of just listen to and go, oh, okay, yeah.
But I think what's happening here is I think you have these fuckers like this that are coming out and saying that, and that they don't represent the majority of the people. I really, you know, at least I hope they don't, but I really don't think they do. I don't think the majority of the people, again, at least I hope, and maybe the ones that are causing trouble, which is a small percentage anyway, that they're sitting there, you know, with that mentality neither, that they're saying, like, what the fuck, man? We just want to be free like everybody else and be left the fuck alone. And this is bullshit. And, you know, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the way the event started, you know, it went for 4 days with no notice, right? It was uneventful. And then I didn't really hear what started the riot, like, you know, what really got it rolling. You know, did you hear, I don't know if you heard any details of that or not, but I was kind of taken back by the fact that there were reported a lot of burned cars, you know, like a lot of car fires. I don't know how many they have in Baltimore that day, but they reported over, you know, 100 on the one report I heard. But they made it, some people were calling it a war zone. And yeah, I look at the screen and I'm like, I've seen pictures, you know, of war zones, and like, have you seen pictures of Syria? That looks like a war zone when you have buildings that are completely shot out, you know, just gaping holes in them everywhere. That looks like a war zone. Rubble all over the place.
Well, some people like gaping holes.
Looks like a war zone. Baltimore didn't look like a war zone. They kept showing one corner They had a camera on it, and they showed a police holding a line, not doing anything about it. And there weren't that many people mulling around. There wasn't 5,000 people in the street. There wasn't 1,000 people in the street. There weren't 500 people in the street there. There looked like there was maybe 150 people there. That was it. And they called it a war zone. So they were definitely pumping the story. No, that to me, was true because, you would expect it was like, just absolute bedlam. And yeah, that one store got wrecked. That's for sure. But I didn't think it looked like a war zone. Maybe, did you see different pictures that would, lead you to believe that?
Well, I mean, who was it that was saying that it was a war zone?
It was on one of the TV channels like CNN.
Yeah, well, that's why. That's what they're going to say, because they're going to, try to sensationalize it and make it look as bad as possible.
Well, they're pumping up the story, right? Which, yeah, you could say, yeah, the media does that. Well, why would you get something this serious like a riot? Would you do that? And, to me, it wasn't good information, right? And and then they played the story out. They turned the story into a city being, under assault, and they set out a curfew and all kinds of other things. They put the National Guard in the streets, and it didn't seem like it had, like, remember the LA riots? Okay, that was a riot. They really were, opening up parts of that city and just wrecking it. And because in there you could see blocks of places being destroyed. I don't mean a block or a corner. I mean blocks of places being wiped out. Maybe they didn't show that because there really wasn't that much property damage because Warren Buffett owned so much of it. So, they weren't going to let them destroy it. They just kept it contained to that one area.
Yeah, they destroyed my LinkedIn logs.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's another part of the story.
But so
they don't talk about.
Yeah, and so from this, you have, of course, all these ignorant fucking newscasters and some of the things that they had talked about, protecting the police. I guess you had there was some 25-year-old that was killed in New York, and then it's, well, how come nobody's mourning him? What about the cop that got killed? What the fuck does that have to do with this? And then you have this whole other thing about, and I think this is Sean Hannity that said this as well, what about all the black on black crime and all the people that are getting killed that way? You don't care about them? And it's just, I don't even know how to have words really to explain that, to say that there's a huge fucking difference when one person goes and kills somebody else and when the government sanctions essentially murder of other people. So I never got, except for their bullshit propaganda, how that makes any fucking sense whatsoever to talk about, well, what about the black on black crime and the black lives and the people that are killed that way? There's no comparison. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, are you supposed to, well, the police are killing all these people, but, other people are killing people as well, and I guess probably with any race, because white people are killing more white people than the police are. So let's forget about the fact that the police, who are supposed to protect people, are killing people, and let's try to stop these white people from killing each other. Like, really? What the fuck is that?
They actually said that.
Well, they didn't, not in those words. It was about white people. I was just making a stupid joke. But they did. This is what gets brought up. It got brought up during Ferguson as well. And it's the same shit. And this fucking pissed me off because I heard it over and over again, is that they're saying, well, why are these people, out here protesting Ferguson? How come what about all the black on black crime? How come they're not out there in Chicago, protesting black on black crime? It's just the most asinine fucking statement because, first of all, again, you are dealing with the government. What are you supposed to do about? I'm not saying there's nothing you can do, but if you're talking about private citizens and them killing other private citizens, that somehow, you have some obligation to, first of all, what the fuck is a normal person going to do about that? I'm not saying there's not ways to maybe try to, help with lowering those numbers. However, when you're talking about the fucking U.S. government that's supposedly supposed to protect you is going out there killing people, it's just one of the most idiotic fucking statements. And somehow they're able to say this shit and say it like, it actually makes sense.
Well, they keep that professional, presentation going. It makes it more believable. Okay. A lot more believable. And so people, if you come off professional and you come off convincing, okay, that's more important than whether it's actually factual or truthful. And, you could take all kinds of stories with that. And in these stories right here, because they exclude so much other information, you don't really have... you really don't have a good option to sit there and critique it and make your own decision. If you look at it for the way they're presenting it, well, it's kind of a foregone conclusion of what's going on, right? And they'll present it initially as a little cloudy or nebulous, but eventually they're saying, these are reasonable explanations, or what's being done with it as far as the story goes. Like the way they respond with the curfew and the way the police, behave, and the way the governor behaved and the way the mayor behaved, even though they contradict themselves and say, early information comes out that they ignore happened, right? Like in Baltimore, the mayor slipped and said the police were ordered to stand down. Okay, well, why? Why would you do that? Okay, it wasn't a massive demonstration. They could have easily, stopped what was going on. Okay, pretty peacefully too. They didn't have to roll up to people and just bulldoze them with heavy equipment. They could have gone in and gradually gotten the crowd to break up and go away, but they didn't do that. So why wasn't that a focus of the story? Instead they talk about having to take measures to suppress the people even more, and then so Al Sharpton could talk about federalizing the police.
And that wasn't just Sharpton. That's something that's been going. So it just shows how he's part of this whole bullshit agenda anyway. Not like a lot of people I think doubt that anymore, because he's always been part of this bullshit where he's just trying to get paid and manipulate people, and he doesn't really give a fuck. But yeah, I told you there was an article months ago, even longer than that, about the Black Caucus saying they want to federalize the police. So
yeah, I saw that too.
That's part of the agenda, because again, it's they're trying to, and I don't know how many people actually buy into that shit. I can't see the majority of the people that are actually out there and seeing what the police are doing are like, oh yeah, if you federalize them, oh, that would be fucking great. I don't see that. Now that may be what they're trying to portray, and maybe find, every 1 in 20 or 1 in 100 person that may have that perspective. But I don't think the reality is that the majority of people, or even close to them, really want to federalize the police or think that would do anything. Again, and I brought this up so many times, it's the federalization of the police and the shit that they've been doing has been causing things like this in the first place, with all the training and the arming of them and all of that. So
they don't cover that near enough.
Yeah, and
not even close.
But the thing I was trying to get to, though, with this, the Reverend and the Imam, or did I get to it? I don't remember, because I was talking about it, and then I'm like, did I actually get to it?
You did not.
That
not
they I didn't think
I'm
I
still
did.
Here.
I just want to make sure that they turned it into forget about the police. And this is the whole thing, that they're changing it into forget about the issue of the police. This is not a police issue anymore. This is an issue of race and, different races not having the same opportunities. That's what it's about. Nothing to do with the police, which is crazy that, and this is something that only, people that are supporting government would do. So they're trying to, they have their own fucking, agenda of politicians or political operatives that are totally twisting it around and saying, hey, look, police are government. We want more police. We want this. We want that. We want control. We want takeover. But what we can do, besides federalize the police, but we can look at this as and twist it into, hey, look, this isn't a police issue. This is a discrimination issue, that black people don't have the same opportunities. And the Reverend and the Imam had talked about some program about making sure that all black businesses get all of these tax subsidies and make sure that they get all of these opportunities, and that they get a basically higher level of competition there, where they're able to bypass a lot of these things and get a higher entry of competition into the market.
Well, I don't have anything against, and I'm sure you don't either, blacks having opportunities, because they're starved out of a lot of them. But it's done in such a way that you have to actually be a little sophisticated about banking and movement of money in corporations and statutes that towns make of what can happen and can't happen, and and they don't have to block things; they just have to make it tougher for it to happen.
Yeah. But my issues with that is, first of all, you're taking an issue that has to do with the police and the power structure of the government and how they're using the police to control people, to incarcerate people, to do all of these things. And that has nothing to do, for the most part, you could say, well, maybe police, target black. I don't think there's a question that, police will target black people more than other people, and that there is an element of racism in the police department. Now, that being said, I don't know, you can relate that to, this whole big other thing and change it into, well, the police is just part of this whole big thing, because it's not. If you see the police and what they do to everybody, although again they do target black people more, this is not a fucking issue of, oh yeah, well, if you just get rid, federalize the police, and if you just give black people opportunity, everything will be great, because you won't have police violating people's rights anymore or anything like that. Or it's just, the whole thing's insane to me, and it's deflecting. If that's what people feel is an issue, the other thing is it's an issue that they want to use government for. So they're going out there saying, hey, look, government is the one that is fucking us over here, but we want more government to help us with this. Now, if it's something where people want to say, hey, look, fuck you, we shouldn't have to pay you any taxes, and nobody should have to pay you taxes, then that's a whole nother story. But no, I don't think at this point that it should be, well, we're going to look at this business, well, you're black, so we're going to give you a benefit of you don't have to pay taxes, but this person does or whatever. And I don't know, and I don't know what your opinion is on that, but and definitely, and I don't want to take away from the fact that racism does exist, and the people that say it don't, I think they're kind of lying to themselves. That it definitely does exist, and the biggest racist organization is the government and the police, all these power structures. So somehow these fuckers are able to convince a certain amount of people, and I don't think it's the majority, I think it's just what they show on TV, that, hey, government is there for you, even though they're fucking you over all the time.
Well, when the president has to come out and make a 6-part speech, or 6-point speech to help discuss this issue, when, he's obviously, black. He's not from the black community because he was raised, with money. But when you have to take 6 points to talk about this topic, when you can't just say, look, I'm going to find out if this was even a legitimate, what caused this legitimately to happen, this rioting. And then, comment, if he doesn't know what happened to, Freddie Gray, then he doesn't care at all. If the president of the United States doesn't really happen to know what happened in a case with this much publicity, okay, then he doesn't care a bit about it. And that this kid's, I think his head was separated from his neck, which is no easy feat because, that's not a loose joint.
I don't know if it was literally his head, but yeah, like his spinal cord was separated. Yeah, it was very fucking strange.
His back was broken.
There's no way they talked about, well, he wasn't in his seat enough. And before that, they have video of the cops beating him. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Did you hear about the gentleman who filmed this? What happened to him?
No.
Freddie? Okay, Kevin Moore was the man, he's black, who filmed Gray's arrest, all right? And dragging him off when he was arrested, okay? Well, they came by and arrested Moore and held him in jail for 4 hours, but didn't charge him for anything and didn't issue a statement that I've heard so far about it. All right? So now you think, well, whatever. Okay. The man who filmed Eric Gardner getting choked to death, okay, he was arrested for 2 counts of criminal possession of a semi-automatic handgun in New York, okay? And, he claims they didn't find anything on me. And he said, do you think I would have carried, illegal weapons after I filmed this thing and had that much exposure?
No, it was a setup. And that was a guy they were trying to kill him in jail or something, too. There was an article where they were trying to poison him in jail.
Ramsey Orta. Okay. Yeah. So this isn't, you can't say that the last 2 incidences that happened within weeks of each other were the filmers of it, and they were, as far as I know, they weren't professional photographers, but they just were filming it. I don't know what they used, but they, I don't know if they used their phone or what, but these 2 guys get retaliated on by getting arrested. There's no charge. They didn't do anything. There's nothing that's going to stick. And and that's not national news, that should be covered for days. I mean, it's almost a bigger story than Freddie Gray's death, almost.
Yeah, it really is crazy, and
so you know, and if you go to look for these stories, Dave, you do not find them on mainstream websites. You don't find them on Fox News. You don't find them on CNN or MSNBC. I didn't find them there. The listing for them on the Google searches is all Breitbart had it. ThinkProgress.org had it. But you don't see it. I don't see any of it on the mainstream news sites.
Yeah, and I wanted to get to the quote-unquote terrorist attack where two guys, I guess, hit one person and then both were killed. And there was a whole bunch of stuff last week that they're trying to exploit there. But we're going to end the show a little earlier tonight. Unfortunately, not feeling all that well. But we will be back tomorrow, and I appreciate everybody for listening. Sorry for the week off last week, which couldn't be helped. That was actually, again, a trip I had to make for my paying job, but hopefully I'm going to set up a little studio in Orlando too, so next time I'm out there we may be able to just do the show while I'm out there as well. So Pete, anything you want to say before we take off?
Well, I hope people reach out to other news sources besides, the mainstream media, and, try to find the truth. Try to look for truth. And when something doesn't make sense, don't excuse it. Make a note of it and follow that note, because eventually you'll see stories that either out or contradict what's being reported. And we'll all be better for it. There's nothing wrong with the truth. It just helps things.
Yeah, it's just a matter, I guess, of finding it sometimes. So,
yep.
Thanks, Pete. And Pete again joins us every Tuesday, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. So be sure to tune in next week. And I will be back tomorrow with Ellen Ball. And we will be talking about Monsanto, GMOs, and various other things associated with it. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Sorry for the short ending tonight, but again, we'll be back tomorrow. So thanks for tuning in.
And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the enforcement. But at the end of the day, each and every member should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Do you owe no answers at all to taxpayers? Do you have contempt?
Show even for like a couple of days, and I had mentioned the Thursday before I left, so I had flew out late Saturday night. That Thursday I didn't end up doing a show, and I do at least 3 live shows a week. I know we say that the show is on weeknights because I was doing replays the other nights, and I haven't been since I got off of Blog Talk Radio, because you can actually just go to Spreaker and listen to it that way, as opposed to there's no listen line being there. And that was the main thing. So people that wanted to listen on the listen line, that we had something playing all the time. And I want to get back to that and look at alternatives for listen lines. There's so much, especially I think being a perfectionist when it comes to this, where I want to give the best show possible. I don't really care. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to get paid for it, but I mean, that's not my motivation. So regardless, I want to give people the best show possible, and not only from a informational standpoint and to put those ideas out there, but at the same time, you need to entertain people to a certain extent, not to the point that you're compromising, your ideas and not getting them out there. But that's going to make the difference. I mean, anybody can sit there, and I've talked about this before. You watch a documentary of somebody just, sitting there like, Bueller. Today we're talking about the media. And the media today exploits lots of things. Maybe if you're trying to go to sleep, I guess that might be pretty helpful. But assuming that that's not your goal and you want to get some information and not just from, again, I mean, I don't know what I call the show a news-oriented show. I mean, we'll talk about some news and some things that are going on, but we'll also talk about philosophically different things and ideas regarding government and the truth about government and stuff like that as well. So I think we cover a lot of different things, and I want to be able to deliver those ideas in a way that you're able to keep focus and pay attention and want to listen and not just be like, well, this shit's fucking boring, I'm going to turn it off now. And so hopefully, we're continuing. Another thing that we're continuing to work on, and you're welcome to give any feedback or any suggestions. Just go to our website, Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and there's one of those boxes somewhere. you can click on the contact us. It's easy to find, and then just put the information in there. And I don't think I've really gotten any, but any that I do get, again, assuming, as I said before, if it's like, fuck you, you suck or something, that's not really going to help. But anything that is a, legitimate criticism, and if you think, well, maybe you should do this, or maybe, you repeat this, whatever, I'd be happy to hear that, because really I do want to give people the best show possible. Just the one thing that I think, no matter what happens, I'm not going to compromise on the ideas and getting those ideas out there. But how we do that, there's different things that we can mess around with, and different segments, and how we present it, and the best way to really communicate that to people. I don't think that's not compromising your ideas. It's just looking at, well, different ways to communicate the same thing. But the constant is always that those ideas that we're trying to get out there, and that trying to make sure that it gets out there to the people, and that hopefully, I know it's not going to be everybody, but hopefully there's a certain amount of people that listen when you're doing a show and you're not able to do it full time and doing all these other things, and still trying to, things, whether it be a job plus activism, and then trying to do a show as well, which I do consider a form of activism, but it makes it a lot harder to give the same, high quality show, and to be able to put all that time and research into preparing for it and just improving and getting better. So, and I didn't mean to get off on a whole thing there, but that being said, it is great to be back. And I was sitting there, so back to, what I was saying last week, I was in Florida, and not a lot of options regarding TV, or I guess I could have listened to some alternative media, but it was just like after working and then just going back to the hotel, and they have a limited number of channels, and there were some things going on that I really did want to see what kind of ridiculous bullshit coverage that they were putting out there. And throughout the week, all the things that I saw, it seemed like to me, and again, I don't really watch any of this shit anymore, so it's hard to say. But even in the past, when I used to watch it, and it still frustrated me, I felt like this is one of the worst weeks of bullshit. I mean, the Boston bombing, I think, was a similar thing, but was also a similar thing for me, where I was in Orlando as well, and pretty much just watching all those channels, observing what bullshit they're putting out there. So there's a few different stories that I want to talk about that I think really speak to that and speaks to this total exploitation and an agenda of government media and how they're trying to portray things that really, to me, doesn't even seem like the reality from any circumstance. And the small aspect of truth, the tiny part of truth there is definitely not representative of the majority of any of the things that are going on. So some of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is definitely what's been going on in Baltimore, but how that has been exploited. And I really haven't, to be honest, looked at a lot in the past couple of days. I think the last report I really looked at, as I didn't feel well after I got back, from my trip. So I kind of laid low the past 3-4 days and even worked from home yesterday from work just because of not really feeling that well. But I did see a lot of stuff the week before that I want to talk about, and that would still, of course, apply, and I have plenty to say on that. So we'll talk about those stories as well as others. As always, our Tuesday co-host live from Orlando, Pete Murtha, is joining us as always. And before I bring Pete on, and I actually did this, I did do this time. So the one time I bring it up, I didn't even have to, where the music is off, so it's not going to fuck with Pete's mic when I bring him up. So thanks, Pete, as always, for joining us.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be back again. And I hope you got some rest this weekend after your trip. And we're ready. I'm ready to do the show again, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, so you had hopefully a nice week off, or day off, whatever you want to call it, from your one Tuesday, and
seems like a week.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it honestly, when I don't do this, you look at, and maybe not specific to the stories that we're going to get into that have been going on in the past couple of weeks, but in general, I mean, do you look at it as, okay, well, government media knows that they're only really targeting a certain percentage that they know they can manipulate, and the rest of the people know it's bullshit? Or do they, think more highly of themselves? Or, I mean, what do you think their whole, their mind state or their thoughts are on what they're doing really, and the whole, how people view them?
Well, it's not a one-size-fits-all question, right? I mean, just so we know where we're starting from. And if you take people who are interested in what's happening, right, you immediately go down to what, less than 50% of the population votes, right? So at least half the people that are in this country that could vote don't really believe that process means anything, right? And I would probably be pretty easily convinced that same disinterested population doesn't buy into the media and what they're doing, really care what they say, believe it, or take it, as something that has weight. So I think they'll watch it for conversational purposes because, you meet a lot of people who just agree with things because they don't want to seem different or odd. They want to be accepted. And I find more and more people like that. But focusing on the 50%-ish of adults that care, you got the two sides, right? And the media has been honed to kind of create a bigger gap between the two sides. So my take on it is that half the people are really out of the game, and they don't pay attention to this, and they don't think or care to do anything about it. One of those two. And they're a little bit of a mixed bag in that respect. then the people who say, they're concerned, that's another mixed bag, because you have people who are just, they're doing it to try to belong to something or have an opinion, and they don't really have an informed opinion. They have a brainwashed opinion, right? They watch the news, they pick the news they like, and they argue from that side. And I mean, I think I have I have a good perspective on it, because that's what happens, right? You get a news broadcast from, two different sides, and although one side has, more team players than the other, but it really doesn't matter. So these people get on their side and they ride it. And I was one of those people for, a very long time. So what I did was I started wanting to know what was really true. And when you start to want to know what's really the truth, it changes how you look at things. And they don't want to change. They want to be right. I think there's a lot of arrogance baked into that. And I think that it's hard to break out of that, because so many people enjoy that aspect. You hear the word vitriolic all the time. I don't even know what it really means. They feed off of that. And it doesn't help anybody, right? It just pushes people away. They insult each other, or they ignore each other, or a selection of other alternatives that aren't anything that brings people together. And you know me, Dave. I'm all about having people love each other, and I think that's what's really important.
You're all about the Benjamins.
Right? Yeah. Ooh. How'd that get in there?
Well, the song.
We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the law, we enforce it. But at the end of the day, each and every member should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan liberty for all. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is Tuesday, May 12th, 2015, and I'm coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. We've actually been gone the past week. I had to be out of town. How to explain it? I was out of town last week for my paying job. And even the week before that, I believe we had to cancel last Thursday. So it's been about a week and a half, I believe, almost, since our last live show. So I apologize for that. Hopefully everybody out there, missed us, but not really counting on that. But it'd be nice if some of you did. So thank you for tuning in to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. You can listen on Spreaker and nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. We promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do what you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom, as well as exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force, as all governments are based on power, control, and ruling over others, and achieve this through violence and force. I feel like I've been gone forever, man, especially last week. I had I don't know if I want to call this the fortunate opportunity or the unfortunate opportunity. It depends on how you want to look at it. I look at it as a fortunate opportunity because I was able to watch a lot of government media and really see their bullshit and just how blatant it is. And, you know, I know that it is, but I don't really watch it much anymore unless I am trying to see the bullshit that they're putting out there. But I haven't kind of stopped that to an extent. I was doing it a lot for a while with listening to like Sirius Radio, the conservative stations, and then the liberal stations, and just seeing what they were putting out there and the bullshit. But I even got away from doing that, where what I listen to a lot, you know, while I'm working, as I've talked about before, I work in an office a lot of time. I'm working independently, so I'll listen to various celebrity-oriented podcasts and you know, kind of check them out and see what's going on with them and any ideas or things that I can see that or to assist me in my own analysis of myself and looking at things that they're doing that I can maybe help incorporate into my own show. Honestly, I haven't found a lot, but no, there are a lot of good you know, shows out there and that are improving and getting better. And I've talked about before that I still think that as a whole, you know, you have these exceptions like Free Talk Live and you know, some of these other shows that are at that top level, but and it really makes a difference. So tonight we're going to talk all about more media exploitation. We've talked somewhat about it in the past. I call it all government media. I know there's mainstream media. That's not really a word I think in my vocabulary anymore, because it's all mainstream media is government media, because that's really what it is, and it's controlled by a government at a certain level. Now, I'm not saying like, you know, there is, and who knows, it actually might be possible, but that there's a department that, well, there kind of is, I guess. You get the FCC, but you know, like a secret department that actually makes sure that the things that are presented when it comes to news programs, that they review them or something like that. I'm not saying, you know, that type of thing, but I would, if I had to bet, I would say that it was, or it is, the kind of structure where people just know there's certain lines you don't cross. And I'm sure there's been examples made of people that have crossed those lines at times. And whether it's something, you know, semi-extreme, like just getting fired or blacklisted, or something very extreme and insane where people end up dead. And we've seen people end up dead actually recently, reporters. And reporters have been gone after under the Obama administration, I guess, more than any other. Not to single out and say, well, he's terrible, these other people are good. But no, I don't think it would matter who's in there now. I think it's just, again, a progressive system where the next person just keeps forwarding that agenda. So, but again, we will be talking about some of these things that, and really getting into a lot of specifics as well, because looking at some of the stuff last week, really, and it's always, I've talked about this before, like, it's always like, okay, well, nothing can really surprise me. It's, you know, whatever, because things are so bad. It's like you think that no matter what it is, this ain't gonna surprise me. This is how fucked up they are, and that's what happens, and whatever. But and I don't know that it's surprising in the sense that, you know, it's something that extreme. It's just like they have the balls to just do this, and really with total disregard for the people that they're saying that we think you're this fucking stupid, that this is how we're going to present something, and we're confident that enough for you is so fucking stupid that you're not even going to know. So I kind of wanted to start with this whole thing in Baltimore, and we've talked about it because it has been going on for a couple of weeks now, and really I've talked about it from what happened and the standpoint of protesting and things like that. But really, I kind of wanted to look at it more from the way I saw government media really present and exploit this, and really how fucked up I think it is. And I just, I'm just watching this shit, and it's just like, on some level it's frustrating, but I guess you get to a point where you get used to it. I don't know, I don't think, at least for me, you ever get used to it where like it doesn't bother you. I guess it just doesn't shock you. But again, as I said, you always have stuff that comes up that you're still kind of surprised there that they have the fucking balls to say some of this shit, and they really believe that people are that stupid. I mean, P, in your opinion, when you